Josh Gates is finally breaking the news about what truly happened during Season 7 of Expedition X. The cameras were rolling when the crew began their night in what was thought to be a normal investigation. But within hours, lights failed, radios went dead, and the team was rushed out under direct command. That episode never aired the way it was filmed. Today, for the first time, Josh reveals what forced production to halt. Before we uncover it, hit subscribe so you don't miss the truth. Season 7 of Expedition X was supposed to be the most ambitious season yet. Ratings were at an all-time high, and the production team had approval to investigate a location that had been repeatedly denied in previous years due to reported safety concerns. According to internal planning notes later referenced by crew members, this investigation was chosen because it was considered the most extreme environment ever featured on the show. The area was remote, heavily forested, and miles from any established road. Equipment had to be transported in by off-road vehicles and then carried by hand for the final part of the approach. Even before cameras were turned on, crew members reported electronic interference, including unexplained battery failure on devices that were brand new. As the sun began to set, Josh Gates arrived on site to personally oversee the start of filming. His presence indicated that this was more than a standard episode. The plan was simple on paper: establish base camp, record environmental readings, monitor potential high-activity zones, and then conduct structured tests overnight. But within the first hour of filming, atmospheric readings began fluctuating sharply. The temperature dropped several degrees in minutes, despite no change in weather patterns. Digital meters registered spikes, resembling electromagnetic pulses. Crew noted what felt like vibration moving through the ground without sound. Josh reportedly paused filming and asked the crew not to speak as he watched the horizon. He later stated that the air felt charged and that the team was no longer observing. They were being observed. That moment was the first sign something was very wrong. The location chosen for the Season 7 investigation was more than just remote. It was restricted. Records show that in the early 1990s, the surrounding land was temporarily sealed off following a series of unsolved disappearances. Official reports listed them as lost hikers, but local residents insist the missing individuals were part of an unofficial geological survey group. According to long-standing rumors, search teams found their equipment neatly stacked near a rock formation while their GPS trackers continued transmitting from an area several miles away. No footprints, no signs of struggle, and no confirmed explanation. Before production began, Josh Gates met with a local historian who warned him not to film after sundown. The historian referenced an abandoned structure deep in the forest, once used as a weather monitoring outpost, which had reportedly been shut down after technicians refused to continue working there. Their reason, according to second-hand accounts, was that instruments recorded atmospheric pressure changes only when no one was present. When anyone entered, all readings went silent. Multiple log entries tied to older investigative teams referenced what they called whisper corridors, claimed to be narrow passages where faint voices could be heard repeating the same phrase. When questioned, each team member believed they heard something different. Despite these warnings, production continued, and base camp was set near the foundation of the former outpost. Within 30 minutes of setup, a field technician reported hearing what sounded like metallic scraping underground. Moments later, his compass began spinning without pause. Josh noted this in his field journals, calling it the first undeniable sign that this location had been waiting. That night, they would learn what for. As darkness settled over the site, the forest fell into an unusual silence. Normally, Expedition X crews record a mix of insects, distant birds, and shifting branches during nightfall. But on this night, environmental microphones captured nothing. No wind, no night calls, not even the faint rustling of foliage. Sound technician notes later described it as if the landscape exhaled, then refused to breathe again. The silence itself became the first recorded anomaly of the evening. At approximately 9:15 p.m., Josh Gates instructed the team to begin thermal perimeter scans. Using handheld high-sensitivity imagers, the crew swept the tree line in slow arcs. Standard practice is to detect warm signatures such as animals or human trespassing. trespassers. What the cameras registered instead were shifting pockets of colder-than-ambient temperature, fast-moving, amorphous zones that briefly appeared, then vanished. One operator insisted he saw a vertical shape almost 9 feet tall pass between two trees, but the reading disappeared when replayed. He requested immediate recalibration. The device registered as fully functional. Around 9:30, lead investigator approached Josh with concern. She reported feeling sudden pressure in her chest, similar to standing at high elevation. 2 other team members noted the same discomfort seconds later. Radio checks were initiated, but several headsets experienced static bursts, even when less than 20 feet apart. Josh, remaining composed, asked for quiet and told his team not to move or speak. For nearly 20 seconds, everyone stood still. In the raw, unedited footage, the only sound picked up was what many interpret as a faint breath, followed by a single, low-spoken word that appeared just behind one of the cameras. The audio was unclear. Some believe it said, "Watch." Others, "Leave." One production assistant claimed it sounded like her own name, though she stood several yards away with no microphone contact. Josh did not immediately react, but moments after the playback, he quietly said, "We are not alone out here. Continue, but stay together." That command marked the turning point from investigation to containment. By 10:15 that night, the strange silence in the forest became more unsettling than any direct threat could have been. Josh Gates instructed the crew to relocate toward a densely wooded ridge, where activity had previously spiked, according to their daytime electromagnetic sweeps. Before moving, the audio engineer replayed the earlier sound captured near the cameras. This time, he isolated frequencies beneath the normal range of human hearing. When amplified and slowed down, the whisper transformed into a fragmented sequence of syllables. Several crew members stepped back as they listened. The phrase registered as 5 distinct sounds, similar to "You should not stay." Despite opinions differing on the exact wording, every person present agreed that what spoke did so with intent. Tension rose sharply. Josh insisted on remaining objective and reminded the crew they were there to verify, not dramatize. Still, protocol required escalating to a controlled formation. Cameras were set to full spectrum mode. Motion sensors were redeployed in a circular pattern around the staging area, and all crew members were ordered to maintain constant visual contact with at least one other individual. At 10:30, the first uncontrolled environmental anomaly occurred. A metal equipment case, secured atop a flat support near the base of a tree, slid nearly 3 feet across the ground without human contact. The ground was level. There was no slope, vibration, or visible cause of movement. 2 cameras were pointed directly at the case. One recorded the slide. The other, positioned at a slight angle, briefly lost focus in what later appeared as a distortion wave moving outward from the center of the clearing. Within seconds, a second shift was recorded. A thermal imager mounted on a tripod rotated on its own and pointed directly into the darkness. Crew accounts state its lens remained fixed on a single location for nearly 5 seconds before a sudden temperature spike was detected. The heat reading showed an object approximately the size of an adult human, standing motionless in the coldest part of the clearing. Yet no figure was visible. Josh Gates approached the monitor and quietly asked if there were any nearby structures, roads, or power lines that could cause interference. The nearest access point was over 2 miles away. There were no known shelters, and no vehicles were registered entering the service road. As the thermal signal pulsed and then vanished, Josh turned to the field producer and said, "If whatever that is can move equipment, we need to reconsider our safety perimeter." Moments later, production halted movement into the ridge. Following the decision to halt advance toward the ridge, Josh Gates convened a rapid reassessment with the lead producer, the on-site safety coordinator, and the technical leads. The meeting took place under red lights to maintain night vision compatibility, with all filming briefly paused to ensure operational clarity. Josh made it clear the objective had shifted from gathering evidence deeper in the site to understanding whether the risk present was reactive or intelligent. He suggested a controlled test. Instead of moving further into the woods, they would attempt environmental interaction from their current safe staging area to measure the response threshold. At 11:10, cameras cameras resumed rolling. The team placed a series of objects at equidistant points across the clearing's perimeter. Simple, visually trackable items such as plastic water bottles, flagged markers, and a small battery-powered lantern. This arrangement was chosen deliberately, following a modified version of a behavioral deployment strategy used in Australian cave investigations, where suspected entities responded when movement patterns changed. The lantern was set to emit a slow pulse at 5-second intervals, while motion sensors tracked anything approaching within a 10-yard radius. Josh stood beside the lantern with 2 crew members, narrating their actions for documentation. He addressed the darkness directly, stating clearly that they would remain at the edge of the zone and inviting any force present to interact with the light. His tone remained steady and unemotional, following established Expedition X protocol for non-provocative communication. For nearly 3 minutes, nothing happened. The crew waited in complete silence, listening only to the rhythmic blinking of the lantern. Then, motion sensors triggered without visible cause. 2 bottles fell simultaneously, one striking the dirt with such velocity that it ricocheted and landed nearly 6 feet away. The lantern dimmed suddenly and then intensified, glowing far beyond its normal brightness setting. A camera, alarmed with what technicians later confirmed was a proximity alert from an unknown source. Audio equipment registered a burst of infrasonic energy consistent with high-frequency pressure changes. The impact of the energy wave caused 2 team members to stagger. One researcher reported intense ear pressure and mild dizziness. The lantern stopped blinking entirely and remained fixed in a solid beam, pointed at the staging tables. Josh quickly ordered all team members to move backward toward the vehicle line. As they retreated, new activity followed. A sudden gust of wind split the clearing despite still air recorded across weather monitors. The direction was highly localized, as if something moved past them. No voices were captured, but one microphone isolated what the sound engineer later described as rapid breathing, directly behind the crew, though no one was physically present. At 11:17, the lead producer declared a stage red alert, triggering evacuation procedure. The stage red alert marked the highest level of emergency response, triggering full extraction protocol. At 11:17, all non-essential equipment was abandoned. Camera rigs were locked into stabilization mode and left recording as crew members formed into pairs and began moving toward the designated vehicle checkpoint. The safety coordinator took the lead, with Josh Gates positioned midway through the group to maintain communication as they retreated. Each member was instructed to report any physical symptoms immediately, both aloud and via body-mounted microphones. As they moved, the lantern, still abnormally bright, remained pointed directly toward the group. Multiple witnesses later described the beam not as projected from a stationary object, but as if following slowly, tracking their movement along the boundary line. No camera captured a mechanical swivel. The lantern itself did not move. The light simply adjusted angle without a clear point of origin. At 11:19, all 3 primary communications devices failed simultaneously. Field radios cut to white noise, satellite phone connections severed without signal loss indicators, and for the first time in Expedition X history, even the encrypted emergency locator beacon began transmitting intermittent errors. The tech team logged this breakdown as triple system failure with no environmental justification. Weather conditions remained clear, pressure stable, and no significant electromagnetic disruption was recorded at that exact moment. Josh immediately ordered transition from slow retreat to rapid extraction. No one panicked verbally, but audio logs captured heart rate spikes in multiple microphones. A ground-level camera picked up what appeared to be soil displacement moving parallel to the group, as if something large burrowed just beneath the top layer of earth. The motion persisted for approximately 12 seconds before stopping abruptly when the crew reached the gravel access road. At 11:21, one crew member experienced sudden chest constriction and had difficulty breathing. She was removed from the primary line and escorted to the nearest vehicle. A medic diagnosed acute stress-induced bronchial constriction. However, thermal footage revealed a cold mass surrounding her position moments before symptoms began. Temperature readings showed a drop of 10 degrees Fahrenheit localized to an area roughly the size of an adult human, though no visible presence appeared. Josh Gates documented the incident verbally while continuing movement, stating, "Evidence has escalated beyond controllable parameters. Full retreat is being executed for crew safety. Risk assessment requires immediate post-operation briefing." At 11:23 p.m., 3 vehicles departed the site. Recording equipment continued autonomously until battery failure at approximately 11:38. What happened during that 15-minute window, particularly what shut production down entirely, was discovered only after the review, and it forced Josh Gates to make a decision that would halt filming for the remainder of Season 7. In the hours after the emergency retreat, the entire Expedition X team gathered at the temporary command post, a secure mobile operations trailer several miles from the site. It was just after midnight when Josh Gates arrived, still wearing his field gear, his expression more focused than shaken. Production executives were connected via live call, and the team began reviewing the final 15 minutes of footage captured after extraction. Everyone expected flickering static, maybe some distant environmental noise. No one expected what they saw. Just over 1 minute after the last vehicle cleared the access road, 3 stationary cameras still recording inside the clearing captured visible disturbances sweeping across the ground like a ripple of pressure. The lantern, positioned exactly where it had been left, flickered once, then shut off, despite still having over 70% power. Seconds later, motion triggered the infrared camera near the equipment table. What appeared next lasted only 5 seconds, but was enough to force production to suspend all field filming. The image showed a tall, indistinct figure standing precisely where the crew had been moments earlier, its outline shifting like heat distortion. It did not approach the equipment. Instead, it turned slowly toward the direction of the departing vehicles before collapsing inward on itself, vanishing without lateral movement. Audio picked up a low-frequency exhale, so soft it was almost undetectable. When the footage ended, the trailer remained silent. Josh Gates spoke first, stating clearly, "This is no longer a survivability test. This is engagement without consent." He recommended production halt all overnight investigations until a complete review could be conducted, even if it meant postponing the remainder of Season 7. It was the first time Josh had ever made such a request. When Josh Gates issued the recommendation to suspend all field operations, the production room split into 2 immediate reactions. The field team agreed without hesitation. They had witnessed the event firsthand and felt that pushing further without a full assessment would be irresponsible. But the network representatives on the line hesitated. Shutting down filming mid-season meant major financial losses, contractual complications, and failing to deliver scheduled episodes. Silence stretched across the call until one executive finally asked if Josh believed the incident presented an actual physical threat or simply an anomaly worthy of higher caution. Josh didn't hesitate. It manipulated equipment without contact. It moved in ways not supported by technology or physics. It exhibited awareness, and it acted only after we engaged it. That's behavior, not background interference. With that, the discussion shifted. A temporary freeze was approved at 1:26 a.m. All on-site personnel were ordered to document detailed statements. A third-party risk specialist was brought in to review footage, along with a senior technical analyst from Expedition X's original engineering advisory board. Data began transferring to primary server storage for multi-field evaluation. What unsettled most involved was the unspoken acknowledgement that they weren't just responding to something unknown. They were reacting to something that had responded to them. Over the next 40 minutes, Josh drafted a preliminary incident report stating that future production in similar environments would require adjusted operational rules, including increased personnel spacing, earlier shutdown thresholds, and a mandatory buffer zone from active interference. He ended his report with a final note, one rarely used in field documentation. Recommend strategic withdrawal pending clarification of intent. In the weeks that followed, Expedition X entered its most cautious operational phase since production began. Field segments scheduled for the remainder of the season were either postponed or shifted to strictly controlled environments. Josh Gates personally oversaw the preparation of all future shoot plans, insisting that no further expeditions continue until the incident was independently assessed and documented by outside analysts. Behind the scenes, major network discussions turned from scheduling to liability. A small working group was formed to determine whether the footage should ever be broadcast without major redaction. Internal review confirmed the figure captured in the clearing was not a camera error, compression artifact, or infrared malfunction. Its outline had measurable heat displacement but lacked identifiable anatomy. What alarmed analysts most was that its position aligned directly with the spot Josh had been standing before ordering extraction. In other words, it did not appear randomly. It appeared where they had chosen to test interaction. Following presentation of the report, Josh issued one final statement to the production board. "We encountered something that reacted to intention. If we go back, we must understand exactly what it was responding to." As of now, that remains the core question. Was it proximity, observation, or the act of engagement itself? Season 7 was not cancelled, but it was delayed. A clause was added to internal documents mandating that any similar field investigation must include a preliminary non-engagement phase before testing interaction. Some crew members chose not to return for future filming. Josh Gates has not publicly disclosed the full details of the event, but according to several staff members, the footage still sits archived pending final decision. Whether it will be shown, or whether it ever should be, remains unresolved.